Well, hi, we are live now, and this is Redhead Ranting, and I have Hendrix on, and you may know her as Legal Tweets or the Pissed Off Lawyer. Say hi. How are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm doing excellent. Just got out of court and I'm excited to do this interview with you.
Awesome. Um, so let's just dive in because we've already kind of spent 20 minutes talking amongst ourselves. Um, so I'm going to just go with my first question here, which is you describe yourself as a pissed off lawyer with 13 plus years in criminal defense. What frustrates you most right now about how the legal system is handling sex-based rights, youth transition, or cases involving gender ideology?
Well, I can definitely speak to that being in a state, because I practice in Michigan, that is extremely trans friendly. So the way the courts, like, let's start at the top. The courts just ruled in Michigan that the Supreme Court handed down you have to use preferred pronouns for all litigants and, like people in the court and lawyers and judges, preferred pronouns and names. Like, you have to do it. It's compulsory, or I'm sorry, it's mandatory. Um, so that's like a one thing that I think is alarming, right? Because that says bias towards gender ideology. Um, the way that the courts currently are handling stuff here, it depends where you are because Michigan has some blue areas, like the cities, but then once you got into rural Michigan, it's a lot different.
So it's very much like Minnesota, which is the same
Yeah,
way. The cities
yeah.
are very blue, and the rest of the state is pretty much red.
Yeah, the cities are where the gender ideology stuff is emanating out of, and where like for example, when I did name changes for trans people, they were just stamping them. I mean, like,
And let me interrupt you here because we should probably backtrack a little bit and give a little bit of your backstory for people who are not familiar with you, though I assume everybody is. Why don't you tell everybody about, your situation or who you are? I hate to say it that way, but what your story is in a really
yeah,
quick
yeah.
nutshell.
No, I'll give you the elevator pitch. Let's see. I was an LGBTQ activist. I came out as a lesbian at 14. I did activism work for 30 years, um, in the community. I transitioned in 2018, and I spent about 7 years as a trans man. And then last year, I announced I was detransitioning in June, and everything went haywire. That's pretty much, and here we are today.
Right. Okay, so in a nutshell, you transitioned to be male, and then you have detransitioned, or have you detransitioned? I'm fascinated by that concept, right? That you
Yes.
detransition. It's like to me, you simply are, right? You are
Yeah.
who you are. Um, but a lot of people really do like the moniker of detransitioner or that journey, so to speak.
I do not. I actually don't like the word detransitioner. The only reason I use it in writing or videos is because normies, people that don't know about this stuff, they can grab onto that concept.
Right.
When it comes to detransition, like, I'm fully medicalized, and I have some friends, like some on the other side, like former male to females, where it's like they've already had the surgeries. I've already had top surgery. There's not much. You can't regrow body parts, right? So I can demedicalize as much as I can to a point, like get laser, come off the T, but there's not really a straight up detransition for everyone. Like, it doesn't fit everyone.
And and I don't if I ask something that is too personal, please just let me
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because I'm on HRT, so I'm on actual hormone replacement therapy for menopause.
Yeah.
And
I was on that.
it has been a godsend to me. So I'm curious that if you've taken testosterone for how many years you took it, were you suppressing the estrogen or does testosterone automatically? I don't know enough about that whole.
Well, I'm kind of unique because in 2016, I dealt with stage 4 endometriosis for an incredibly long time. I had 12 abdominal surgeries, yada, yada, yada. In 2016, I had a full hysterectomy, not related to transition. It was for endometriosis. So when I transitioned, I didn't have any ovaries or
Oh,
hormones.
okay, okay,
But I went through surgically induced menopause, so I started HRT for that, which you're probably on a lot of the similar things I tried.
right.
because when you don't have ovaries at 34, it's like
It was horrible.
it's
The hot
horrible. It's
flashes and
heinous.
it was
Um,
absolute hell.
so I tried a bunch of the patch, the ester test, birth control. Finally I went on compound cream for estrogen and testosterone, and that's how I ended up with some testosterone in my system. And then it kind of like gradually changed over the year that I was on HRT, but it started off with estrogen. That's the
Okay.
interesting
So
part.
now are you replacing the estrogen or
Yes and no. Like, well, they gave. I have the same problem I did when I went through menopause, which is insurance will cover these stupid patches that don't do anything. So I have to pay out of pocket for actual estrogen.
okay, now here just FYI, I do the pellets. So they
Yeah,
insert,
I've heard of those.
oh my God, they are amazing. I had a friend, and she's the one who told me about it, doing the creams and that sort of thing. And she was, it was not she'd go up and down because it wasn't a consistent,
Yes.
you know what I mean? It was so she could forget a day or she didn't put enough on or whatever. So it was just not consistent at all. The pellets are, it's 3 months of just not thinking about it.
Yeah, I've
And
heard they're wonderful.
they are really wonderful. And if you
My
can
doctor
find
does them.
somebody who does them, I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
But
my doc does do them. The thing about estrogen, I wanted to just make clear for me is that endometriosis spread to my bowels, so I still have to deal with that. It's there forever. It's been since 2008 this way. Estrogen feeds that disease badly, so like I can be on some, but I have to like be very like minimal with it. The dose I was on before I transitioned was probably the right one. Whatever combination cream I was on before I did that was just right, you know. So I need to go back to that. But it compounded cream, that's not covered by insurance. So the pellets, I know those aren't. So anything, it's interesting for women that are going through menopause, that should be covered. But detransition also should be covered. Hormones are important.
yeah, that's interesting because and I don't know what it is like in Michigan, but the transition drugs were covered.
Everything was covered. I don't, everything, my top surgery, and I was on Medicare.
So, but the detransition is not.
0%.
See, now that seems to me to be really unfair, you
It's
know.
incredibly unfair. So you're going to transition me, and there are detransitioners that come out and are still trans friendly and still this, and I understand that. But like, I think the one universal thing we can all agree on is that there's just no healthcare codes or like healthcare for detransition.
Yeah, do you have any plans to get involved in that at all as a lawyer?
I might. I might, if the opportunity presents itself, like if my skills are needed and I can do something about it, I think I might fight my own insurance company about the injectable estrogen, because they'll cover the injectable testosterone but not the estrogen, and they want me to pay $300 a month for it.
Ow. See, now my HRT is covered. I have to pay for the insertion.
Yeah, the pellet part. Yeah,
Yeah. So the pellets are covered, but the procedure I have to pay for.
my
So,
doctor is telling me that he's trying to actually push some of it through as fertility. Maybe they won't notice I had a hysterectomy. It's crazy what you have to do.
yeah, I
Um,
used to think that was sort of an unethical thing, but I think I've given up on, I have issues with the whole medical profession now just because of COVID and everything else that is, and we don't need to go down that road, but
no, I'm
uh,
with you on that. So
it's like, yeah, if I'm whatever, tell them whatever you want to tell them. Um, so let's see. We already covered the testosterone. You call yourself a music aficionado. What's a song or band that always makes you crank up the volume and feel like a total badass, even on the worst days?
that's Metallica, easily.
That's hilarious. Okay, let's backtrack a little bit. You've been going back and forth with your name.
Yes.
Um, I saw your post last night on X that your given name is Erica and that your mom named you that after Erica Kane, which
Yeah.
that to me is, that was such a sweet post, and it's such a nice revelation, and I can see it. Like, that was quite the gift that your mother gave you, because if anybody knows who Erica Kane is, she was a character on what, All My Children, right?
Yeah, on my shoulder. Yeah.
And she was this badass woman. She was beautiful. She was conniving. She was all of the great '80s soap opera stars, and she didn't take any shit. And so I really do think that that was a great choice that your mother made for you, because that's exactly, to me, who you are. So I thought that
Awesome.
was actually a very sweet post that you gave. But you're going to, you might take that name back, but you are going to go by Hendrix. And I'd like to just have you speak about that whole name process and what that means in your transition and detransition.
Yeah, when I first made the post about detransition in June, and I announced that I wasn't gonna go by Erica, I want to make it clear that that detrans post was not supposed to go viral. Like, I made it at maybe 6:30 in the morning before work and went to work. I didn't. I made it to be accountable to myself, and then boom. Anyway, I said in that post that I wasn't gonna go by Erica because of all the trauma associated with it, which is true. However, the inner, year that's gone by almost, people started using Erica as a slur to like insult me.
That's right. And they were doing that before, to be honest. I mean,
Both ways, yeah.
they were dead naming you, as they called it.
Dead
Uh,
naming, yeah.
yeah, which I thought that was awful, to be honest with you. So it's kind of like taking back the slur of, I don't want to use the word queer, because I still think that's a slur, but, um,
Yes.
you know, I'm trying to think of a appropriate one. I don't know. Anyway, but it's like, I mean, I would imagine that there's some power involved in feeling comfortable with that name again.
Yeah, like reclaiming it. And there's a secondary function of me doing that, which is on paper, my middle name is James, and I have to do something about that. Like, changing your name is a really annoying process. I just did it in 2024. I haven't even changed half my stuff from Erica yet, so like another name change will be annoying. But on paper, like as an attorney, if they see Erica Hendricks Moyes, it's going to be a woman. Like, I'm not going to have to deal with that anymore. Like, it'll be easier to just identify me, and because I do look more masculine. But I think it's part of reclaiming, and it's part of also like professional identity and just being a woman on paper. And I told my mom, I was like, when I do die, I don't want Hendrix on my tombstone. I was born Erica, so
Oh, well, I think that's really sweet. Because I think names are really, especially as a parent who's named a couple kids myself, and I didn't like my name when I was younger. I remember changing it to, my name is obviously Jennifer, but I went by Jenny, Jenny, and I hated that. It always seemed so childish to me, and I changed the Y to an I, um, and it was stupid, but I insisted to my teachers and everything to refer to me like with the I and not the Y, which is similar to, preferred pronouns and whatnot. I did this for about a week. I was so obnoxious, it wasn't even funny. And then I realized this is stupid, and I went back to Jenny. But I I find the idea, I'm fascinated by names, who we identify with. I've changed my name a couple times. I've been married and divorced twice, so I have gone back to my maiden name each time.
so then it's not that fun.
Well, for me, it was easy to do it in the decree.
Ah, that's
You
true.
have
Yeah.
to, it's much more complicated for how you have to go through the process. And then all I had to do is take that decree and bring it to, Social Security, or actually, I never changed my Social Security, but, my driver's license and my passport. It was not complicated, unless you want to include fighting in court for 2 years while I got divorced, which was.
Well, speaking of court, another thing that is about changing names that I wanted to bring up, now it escaped me, about changing my name, and now it just So
It'll
maybe
come
it'll come
back.
back to me.
It
Yeah.
happens to me all the time.
It's
I
menopause. It started happening.
Yes, I'm convinced it is. I walk into a grocery store and I'll stand there in the entrance thinking, why am I here? No idea why I'm here.
I've permanently been like this since I was 34. Like where my short term memory is just might work, might not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's supposedly games and stuff we can do to make it better, but
Yeah,
I've
give me some
forgotten what
puzzles.
they are, so it doesn't really matter. Um, Lucky Charms is your favorite cereal.
The
Really?
marshmallows.
Is it okay? So you're the kind that would buy the marshmallows, the box of marshmallows,
I
and
have.
not you have okay.
When somebody told me that was on Amazon, it was over. I bought the bag of marshmallows. I mean, although I was like, no, I like to keep my girls figure, so we're gonna stop that. You know.
Those are those little dehydrated marshmallows too, right?
Yes, I wasn't allowed to eat any of that growing up, like those kinds of cereals. So when became an adult, I was like, oh, Lucky Charms, cinnamon toast crunch. I went crazy.
That's wild because I'm a kid of the '70s and I was raised on that stuff.
So I was in
So
the '80s, but like we had to eat some boring cereal.
yeah, it's my parents thought, Tang was a great idea and all this stuff, the convenience and getting off of it was not easy. So I don't know. But it's the commercials were fun for sure, right?
Yeah, maybe you want to buy all the cereal.
Yeah.
It was the prizes. That's what I got mad about.
Oh, I miss the prizes. Like I would buy them again if they had the prizes in it. And they had good prizes when we were kids.
They did. They're cheating these kids these days.
And the record on the back, remember that you could play on your record player? Um, God, no. Wow. That opens a whole other door. I hope my dog barking is not bothering you. Can you hear her barking?
Yeah, but it's like
Okay.
background noise.
Yeah, there's not much I can do about it. She's just got to run out because she's looking out the window at the squirrels eating at their little picnic table that I got
He's
them.
guarding you.
Yeah, well, let's see what else. Tell me about the Romani aspect of all of this.
So yeah, a lot of people are confused with that. My dad is the Romani. Um, so Romani is not Romanian. For anyone listening, a lot of people well, I can see why they think that's Romanian because it's like right there. Romani people are from India. We
India?
migrated India. Yep, and we migrated to the Middle East about 1,000 years ago, and then made a wrong turn to Eastern Europe, and then we were enslaved for 500 years in Romania, and then got out around 1861. So that's the background. I come from a family of Romani gypsy musicians. So I have a gigantic family on that side. Like, I have cousins everywhere. Okay. But I grew up in that culture of music and dancing and just it's very different than like American culture. So I had like my mom who's, just suburban white woman, and then my dad who's this like, city gypsy boy. And they came together because of disco. So here I am.
Disco did a lot of good.
Yeah, I'm a product of a disco romance. Maybe that'll be the title of my book. But
I like that.
yeah, I just think that growing up that way with all the music and the culture, and so like it's hard to explain to anybody that wasn't there. You know what I mean? But it significantly impacted me. It makes me clash a little bit sometimes when people aren't realizing like that's a cultural thing for me. Like for example, family is extremely important to me. Even if they're horrible, we won't estrange ourselves from each other.
I'm curious about that. So have they been supportive in the transition and the detransition?
Yes, I think they reluctantly supported my transition, and here's why. I came out as gay to them when I was 15, to my mother. All hell broke loose. I don't have time to tell that story. We could do a whole podcast just on how bad coming out for me was. Conversion therapy, running away, violence, the whole 9 yards.
15.
Alienation. It
When
took
was that? What year was that roughly?
98.
Wow, okay.
I was only 15 when I came out. I was 14 when I came out to other people, but to my parents, I was 15.
I'm just surprised that in '98 that was still that conversion therapy even existed.
Yeah, they were. It was in the mental hospital too. but the psychiatrists were trying to. I just said what they wanted to hear, and I got out in 2 weeks. But like, I never stopped being gay. But it took decades to repair some of the damage from that with my parents and my family, to come around and me being gay and like me coming around to them because of what happened. So I think with that just in mind, when I transitioned, I don't know that they were gung ho about it. I think that they didn't want to alienate me again, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. As far as, so they didn't want you to be gay. Are you saying that they would have supported the transition because
No,
then you
because this is
weren't
like
gay
years
anymore?
apart. This is like 20 years apart,
Okay.
So
Okay.
like, I'm just saying they didn't want to repeat the mistake of alienating me and losing
Okay.
me.
Okay. Because isn't that's something that people will claim is that they're transing the gay away, right? So that
Yes.
it's the trans, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a way to be homophobic by changing the sex. So therefore, you're no longer gay. I'm not saying this right.
Yo,
Uh,
you're getting there because with transing the gay way, I did that essentially, but just because of homophobia. Like I dealt with decades of homophobia from my parents, from society. From I mean, I grew up in a different time, uh, and than the kids do today. They don't understand. Like
no,
being gay was not like it is today. So I dealt with decades of homophobia, and I do feel like I trans the gay away. And then in some places like Iran, if you're gay, they will want you to transition to a woman, so to trans the gay away.
right. But if you're gay, they throw you off the building.
They're going to do that, or you become a woman.
I mean, those are the options, right?
Yep, you cut
Yeah.
your penis off, or you go off the building.
Or you just go back in the closet and
Yeah, you do
play.
one of those three things.
Yeah.
So like it's that is definitely a term or a thing.
And so I'm always fascinated that clearly that wasn't the issue with your parents. It was they just didn't want to lose you, right?
Because
Um,
now talking to them, my dad's clueless. Like he doesn't even know what I'm doing. We don't. He doesn't know much about my life. We talk, but like he's just that kind of dad. My mom and I are very close. She, when I told her I was detransitioning, she got mad. Because not because she's like, you on me about those pronouns, you know.
I'd be pissed too. It's like, Jesus, I just did all this stuff for you. Now I got to go back. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
She was in the hospital for blood clots, and I told her this, and she started swearing at me. It was so funny though, because like I used to be that person to correct my mom every 5 minutes, and how obnoxious.
Right. That, I mean, that's always been the argument, at least my position on this. It's just, I don't care how you dress. I don't care how you identify, but you can't change my thoughts,
No,
and that idea of like, you might be able to compel me to say something different, but it's not going to change the way I think, that can only happen through persuasion. And, and I don't know how you persuade anybody to actually believe a lot of this stuff. And I know that's going to get me in trouble, so I don't want to get into that too much. But I'm because you were gung ho on all of that. You were very
it was the last 2 years of it where I was the most gung ho, and it's because I got back into activism after I was disabled and I didn't work for 6 years. So when I first started transitioning, I was very quiet, anonymous, and just to myself. It was the last 2 years of activism when I got back into the activist sphere, when I got back to work, that where I became like a pretty hardcore, obnoxious TRA. So
was it activism, or I'm sorry, was that hardcore? Was it was it kind of a peer pressure thing? Like the other activists were expecting you to do that, or
yeah, a lot of peer pressure. I spent 6 years out of the workforce and out of activism. When I left, well, I didn't leave activism when I left
hang on a
organizational
second. I'm
Oh, yeah,
I'm
go
gonna let her out. I'm sorry about this, and I hope we can edit this out.
ahead. I'll start telling some jokes.
I apologize. The problem is I'm going to have to let her back in, but we'll hopefully get a little of this done. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, where were we at
You're
now?
talking about the activists and how.
Yes. Okay, so when I became sick, I stopped working. I stopped working with organizations. I didn't stop necessarily doing like grassroots stuff when I was sick, but I started stop working with any of the LGBT orgs because I wasn't working. When I left it, it wasn't this crazy in 2016 or 2017. And it was like the seeds of crazy were there, right? After marriage equality. So I was out of the game. When I came back around 22, 23, this shit was this stuff
No,
was
that's
very
fine.
different. It was like night and day from when I left it and came back. And now I had to subscribe to all this stuff or I was out.
Was there a moment where you thought to yourself, "This is nuts," or
Yes.
oh,
The
and
trans kids were nuts to me. Even though I publicly would be try if you look at my past responses about trans kids, I'm trying so hard to avoid it, talking about it, where I would say, okay, that's up to the parents. Like I didn't know what to say because I didn't agree with it.
yeah,
But it's like getting canceled, and after 30 years of doing activism, there's a lot of pressure.
I bet. I mean, it's a hard. It's I. I've tried to put myself in that place of being an activist and for the ideology and the trans rights and all of that, and I would imagine that you get tangled up in a lot of that sort of thing because
Yes.
there's so much pressure because really it's once you pull the string of child transition, the whole thing kind of starts to fall apart. And there's how do you maintain it? So it's got to be like walking on eggshells all the time, I would
It,
imagine.
I'll tell you the way LGBTQ plus that's how I would call it Inc. activism works now is it's very leftist, like to the extreme, right? To the extreme left. You have to subscribe to all the beliefs. Period. There is no room for any kind of variation of thought, and I learned that the hard way last year. So like,
I think
even
that's pretty normal now in all of any kind of activism or any kind of
yeah,
whatever position you take.
it's
Like
so
it doesn't matter.
tribal.
It's this purity test that you have to walk the line, and it's it's sad because we never used to be like that. We used to be able to disagree. We used to have we could carry multiple beliefs that didn't necessarily align with everybody else. This idea that you must check off all the boxes or you do not belong with us is mind blowing to me, and
I
it's
hate it.
so divisive, and you lose friends over it, you lose family over it. It's so disruptive.
Yeah, it's disruptive. It puts people in these tribal attitudes, and you're over here, and I'm over here, and I can't talk to you because you don't believe this one thing, extra thing. I've actually never liked that in politics because I've worked in politics since I was young. I've never liked that purity spiral. I think it's very damaging.
Have you ever considered running for political office?
That used to be my ultimate goal.
Oh, really? What were you thinking of running for?
So like something legislatively or judge, but I think legislatively, like being a legislator, would be more effective than being a judge in terms of changing policy. Except for now, I'm like, how would I run for office with all my? I can't do it as a Democrat, that's for sure. But the Democratic Party used to be behind me. They wanted me to run. I was young. They were going to do that. So
I don't know. I think, have you been watching Spencer Pratt out in California?
I've been seeing some stuff, and I think it's crazy. That's interesting.
I think he's kind of, and he's probably not the first. I'm sure, obviously, I
Yeah,
think Trump did it too, but um, he's kind of ripping at the whole idea of party affiliation. I don't know what his party affiliation is. I think he's
I don't
running as a
either.
Republican, maybe, but, and I think that's the votes he's going to get. But I would assume he's a former Democrat, being from California and all of that. And I think I'm just, I'm enjoying watching his campaign because he's just blowing holes in the whole narrative.
You know, it's interesting. I've always said my dream was to start a viable third party. Maybe it is the time because like people are sick of that like checklist of beliefs on one side or the other. It's very
Yeah,
hard.
but then you're going to have it in the third party too.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. Ideological purity always happens.
I mean, when I grew up and we were, it was always about finding the common ground with people because there always is common ground, and there's probably more common ground than not. And
Yes.
now it doesn't seem to be that that's even like like they don't want you to pursue that. They don't want you to find the common ground because then you kind of that pulls apart the tribe narrative, right? So,
It starts to humanize you.
right. And oh God, awful to humanize people. So, um, yeah, wow. Well, that'd be interesting to see if you do run for political office.
Yeah, you know, you never know. You never know. I mean, I have the background for it. I might be moving, so we'll see. What maybe I'll do better in a different state. I don't think I would run in Michigan. That's all.
No,
No, I think I'm gonna. I actually have plans to move, but eventually. So
it says you've posted some great memes and reactions. What's the funniest and most ridiculous thing you've posted as the pissed off lawyer?
God, I've posted so many dumb things. I don't even know what's the dumbest. You know, sometimes I post these memes and then not thinking, and then they get 4 million views, and you're like, but my content that I spent half an hour working on gets one view. It's wild how stupid it is. Um,
And speaking, because I've had the same sort of thing happen. It's like um, the last thing I would expect to take off takes off. Do you? In my head, I'm thinking maybe I should just give the algorithm what it wants and stop trying to force what I want it to have and just
yeah.
post stupid whatever. Have you ever considered that, or do you see your position or not position, but your account on X? And you're on other platforms, right?
I am. Yeah.
Which is X your most active one, or
Yeah, definitely the most. I've been on Twitter since 2008 with my original account. The pissed off lawyer I made in 2022. I actually made it on my 40th birthday in a hotel the day that Roe v. Wade got overturned. Hence the name.
oh, oh, okay.
That's where it came from.
Do you see that the account, the pissed off lawyer, transitioning into something either more broad or I guess pissed off can be anything, right? You pissed off about
Yeah.
the whole thing, but
I actually was thinking on my way to the office about how I've been pigeonholed or pigeonholed myself essentially into this trans content. But I have I have an entire array of interests and political beliefs and things that I'd like to talk about. It's like the algorithm, though, it wants that trans.
that's what it wants from you. Okay.
Yeah, it wants that from me because when I post about other things, it's just like I might as well just have not done it.
I do think you have to be, you have to be kind of consistent with the other things if you want them to take hold.
Yeah,
You have to post them more than once or
yeah,
twice. You do have to make an effort to make them because you've been posting about trans stuff and detrans stuff forever. So the algorithm is really just trying to give you what you were giving it. But
yeah.
I would love to see content from you that is I'm especially the law. I really find those posts interesting. Your take on that, and not even necessarily about trans or anything like that, but just general stuff like that. You're quite knowledgeable when it comes to that, and you are quite funny. And so
Thank you.
I, but you got to catch it right because you come off as being very um, angry sometimes, and it's in the names. So I've caught you where you said something quite hilarious, but I think people look at it and aren't quite sure if that was what you were trying to do.
No, you know, text. I'll tell you, texting. When texting came, here's the story. When we started to text early in the 2000s, and like I had girlfriends, and like I would get in some before emojis came out, I would get in a lot of fights over my tone, even though I didn't mean it that way, because the way I talk is very direct. It sounds angry, but my delivery in person would be so much different. So I've kind of always had that problem where things in text don't come across as well as they do in person. I'm kind of somebody you need to get to know past the text.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just sound mad.
Well, and emojis certainly help, right?
That was a nice help.
There's something absolutely horrid to somebody, but if you put a little smiley emoji, it's all good, right? Isn't that silly?
It is. It's funny how it's evolved over time, texting into
Yeah,
like, you know.
I've got somebody who leaves comments, and sometimes um, they can be pretty negative, and I but then he'll leave a smiley emoji after it, and it's like, do you think that makes up for everything?
Yeah, now it's happy.
What is that? I don't know. I'm fascinated by language and how we communicate with one another. So I love Twitter or X or whatever,
Yeah.
and I think it's. How do you think that that has impacted your life and in or social media, I guess, for that matter? What's yeah.
Majorly. I've been. I started writing a blog in 2001. So I've been writing online
Wow.
and using social media for 25 years. I have so much writing. My live journal went from 2001 to 2012 of my life. Facebook I've had since 2007. Twitter since 2008. Like I'm of that generation right there where I was an early adopter of like every single one of these things because I was just young at the time, my 20s or teens or, well, not teens. No, that was the 90s. So social media didn't have an impact until like I started doing gay rights stuff. Before Twitter came the Facebook drama. So I was kind of primed for it where I had a lot of Facebook shit because of my activism. Now when we get into Twitter, it's profoundly affected my life because the reach and the things that have happened are so much bigger. Like when I came out as D-trans, my entire life blew up. That post alone changed my entire life.
Yeah, I remember watching that unfold. That was something else.
Yeah, I posted like I said earlier. Before court, I get to in court, I get out, and J.K. Rowling's in my like. I'm just like, oh my, it's blowing up. My phone's blowing up. Everybody's trying to call me, and I was like, wow, okay. And I didn't look. I don't. I wasn't looking for that. That's what I want to make clear. I had like 25,000 followers. I wasn't expecting a 9 million view post.
Wow. So when you say that it has impacted you, has it been positive, a net negative, or
Mostly negative,
mostly
but
negative?
I'm trying to turn that around. I'm doing a lot better than I was in 2020. 2025 was just a disaster. Everything was falling. Trans was falling apart. Gender ideology was unraveling for the first half. Then I finally came out as detrans and rejected it. So like social media affecting me, it. I have stalkers and people dragging me and being doxxed, and my mother was just doxxed. Like people have no shame on there when you don't have the opinion that they want. So
Who are you getting this? Because I remember when you came out as D-trans and J.K. Rowling reached out to you. I watched the whole thing,
yeah,
and she was quite gracious and kind, and I believe very supportive to you.
very.
And and so where have you found the most support? Because my understanding was that it was the TERFs who were quite welcoming to you, whereas your own community rejected you.
Yeah, that day alone, 1,300 mostly trans accounts unfollowed me from my metrics.
Have you reconnected with any, like, have you had conversations with any of these people?
Yes, I tried to have some trans friends for some time, but what ends up happening is they just stab me in the back. Um, Ultimately, so I just don't have it. I'm fresh out of trans friends.
Okay. So,
Not on purpose. Like I'm not saying, oh
no,
my
no,
god,
I asked you that. Did they
yeah.
did they articulate to you why that might be? I'm just curious from.
Well, when I got canceled, it was by gays and lesbians, trans, gay, like because a lot of the LGB is like captured by the ideology, but I lost friends immediately because, and here's the thing: when I came out and said I'm detransitioning, it wasn't transphobic. I didn't attack trans people. It was just about me. they said that me announcing it, the act of announcing it, was transphobic. I can't keep up.
I think that's been the argument the whole time, is that
Yeah.
it's impossible to keep up. It's like the rules changed and nobody gave any of us the memo. Um, like, I can't imagine if my grandparents were alive today, like they wouldn't recognize the world that we live in. Even living through all of these changes, um, it's still hard to believe how, the last 10 years, I suppose, have just been kind of wild, right?
Yes,
Um,
they have.
so, so you don't maintain any relationships from that time at all.
No, my last friend was Frida Wallace that I talked to for some time at like some extended period of time. He was my friend. He's in England, but ultimately, like they just any trans person around me that's seeing my Twitter and it's just they can't like they
Is
just want to
that
fight
pretty
me.
standard for somebody who detransitions? Do you know?
Yes,
Do you
yes.
do
Now
you
there
have
are
relationships
detransitioners
with?
that will. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just curious, if you don't have relationships or friendships with trans people anymore, do you have them with detrans people?
I do.
Okay.
I have some pretty good a couple of detransitioners I'm close with. There's been some drama in that community, but like again, anything that's ideologically driven is gonna create that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've made some like it's quality over quantity, right? So I would rather make. I found a girlfriend. I fell in love because of detransitioning. So
There, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So you wouldn't have had that relationship without detransitioning, or
I don't think so.
no?
I don't think she would have actively dated someone in a cult. Her words exactly.
I was going to say, your words, not mine.
Yeah.
Um, that's fascinating, and I know who your girlfriend is, and we're not going to go
Yeah.
down
No,
that
we're not
road.
gonna say who, but yeah.
But I mean, I'm happy for both of you. I think that's fantastic that
Yeah,
you
it
have
was, and
found.
then I made a couple really good friends. A couple detransitioners like Ari and Prisha Mosley is another one. Um, it's good to have because not everyone. This is an experience that's pretty unique in my life, and it's nice to have others that you can talk to. You know.
So on that, and I think the world of Prisha and Ari both. I've very much enjoyed them coming into their, mostly Prisha. I know better than Ari, but just watching her become who she is becoming, which is regardless of trans ideology. She's just a young woman who is becoming an adult, right? And
Yeah.
that's what's happening. So when you think about yourself and the transition and detransition and all of that, do you feel different from that whole? I mean, do you still consider yourself, you're just who you are? Does that does that make sense? What I'm
I
trying to
think
say?
I'm coming back to just like I'm me. Okay, without surgeries or hormone. I don't like I'm just existing, right? And coming back to just embracing being a woman, whatever that may mean for me, because every woman's different, right?
And that's always kind of been my position, is like, I don't think of myself as a woman. I just
Yeah,
am.
yeah. I don't spend like when you're trans, you spend a lot of time thinking about your gender,
Right.
whereas before I never thought about it.
Okay. And I guess that's where I was kind of going, is like, and how did that happen? I'm curious.
Oh, how did I transition? Oh,
No,
well,
no, no, no.
oh,
How did you suddenly start thinking about your gender all the time?
well. When I became disabled and sick, I was isolated and had nothing to do all day, laying in bed in pain. So guess what happened? The internet.
Yeah.
Reddit is one of the most, I would say, trans like boot camp sites.
Yeah.
I worry about young people more than me, but I was a very vulnerable adult. I, I know I was an adult, so like I know people watching this will be like, "Well, she was an adult." Yes, but I was also disabled, incapacitated, not working. I gave up my law salary for disability, so that should tell you how sick I was. I mean, nobody wants to live on disability when you make hundreds of dollars an hour. That's just common sense. So, you know, all my friends kind of abandoned me when I got sick. That was another second. It happens. That's a thing for people. I'm not the only one. So I had a lot of alone time. I was in a lot of pain and laying in bed, staring at phone. Like I had nothing to do.
I have to let her in now. So
Oh,
let
yeah,
me
go ahead.
not do that thought because I want to
Yep.
follow up on that. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
So, do you think you were that it was the community that you were looking for? You know, that
I think that was part of
you
it.
lost friends from being disabled, which I know is a thing. Um, I think being alone is isn't that like the greatest fear that human has is to be cast out? So if you are in that situation, I don't think it matters if you're an adult or a child. You want to find a community that loves you, right? So I think it would be, and then there's the love bombing that happens and all of that. Do you think that that's played some role
Oh
in
yeah.
your?
I think it was easy to for the trans community to just look at me because I was a butch woman and say, "Oh yeah, clearly you're trans." I mean, and I wanted to state this little underlying thing in the lesbian community with masculine lesbians. There was 10 years ago and 8 years ago somewhere around there a lot of pressure on butch lesbians to transition. That was a thing talked about amongst us.
Is that still a thing now, or
Uh,
is this
from
changing?
what I hear, it is from the younger generation more so than mine. But like like Gen Z and younger, like they're just telling these masculine lesbians, "Oh no, you're a man."
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
It seems that trans ideology has kind of fallen by the wayside with a lot of the Supreme Court, decisions and things like that. And in Minnesota, that's not the case, but it seems like around other parts of the country, it's kind of not like it's peaked already, right? It's
Yes.
2022, 23, 20, maybe 24 is when it kind of dropped off. Do you see that continuing or do you see
Yes.
it? You do? Okay.
I think the trend is going to drop off. I hate to say this. Look, I didn't vote. I don't want to get too political. I didn't vote for Trump for 3 times in a row, but now I'm not a Democrat. That's a whole long story. I left the party 10 years ago. I was an independent, yada, yada, yada. So, but I do appreciate his efforts on gender ideology because I think it broke the wheel. I think when he came in and signed all those executive orders, saying we have two genders, we have this. It kind of broke the zeitgeist of the 2020 transness. I think it was helpful. I think.
Okay. And
I mean, obviously, here I want to say at the time though, I was very upset because I was trans.
right, I guess I forget about that. It's such a because of your position on kids, not being part of that or shouldn't be or whatever. They shouldn't be medicalized, I'm assuming is what you meant, right?
Yeah, or
Were
even
you
nothing.
not even social transition?
I guess I wouldn't mind that as much as I do when it gets down to puberty blockers and anything chemical or surgical. I think the reason I don't like social transition is because you're lying, like, it's a lie to this innocent child that you can change sex, and I think you're setting them up for a life of disappointment. But is it the same thing as like giving them puberty blockers? Not no. So
Yeah, I don't know. It's I'm with you on the whole it's setting them up for something that cannot be attained or at least not in our current medical, scientific, chemical.
yeah, it's not
It
scientifically
isn't.
viable.
It's a simile of what they're trying to get, but it isn't that. Um, and I think that if and I don't I didn't want to go down this road because I really am. I think that people should be able to do what they want and act like, to me, you have always seemed like a woman to me, but that's because I know that you are a woman. So it doesn't matter how you dress or how you wear your hair or any of those things. It doesn't change the very reality bit that you are still a woman.
Yes.
And as an 80s kid, right? So we were all gender bending, and people did whatever the hell they wanted, and we had Michael Jackson and David Bowie, and not that Prince, um, all of that. And it didn't matter how we dressed or how we wore all kinds of weird.
And I watched that.
Yeah. So to see this come up, how many years later, it seemed to me it was so regressive, because suddenly, if you wear a dress, that makes you a woman. I don't wear dresses very often at all. I wear pants and jeans, and I don't consider myself masculine, but I certainly don't dress appropriately if that's what is going to make me a woman. You know what I mean? So to me, it was just like, this is so regressive. We have gotten so far away from all of the things that we have achieved in the last 50 years.
Yeah, for women especially.
Yeah.
I think, let me give a good example of something regressive in the trans community that started to break my brain. I would host these Twitter spaces with every Sunday at 8 p.m. They were trans themed. So, and tons of trans people, but it was mostly trans women, trans identified males, running my space while I didn't talk. Like, they just talked over me.
Really?
But then they would tell me I was a misogynist. And this started to like break my brain, right? Where I was like, how can I be a misogynist to you? That didn't math. That started to like everything I did was misogynistic. If I talked, it was misogynistic. Talking over a trans woman is misogynistic. Even though I'm very soft spoken and didn't talk. Sure. That started to really bother me. Stuff like that. Like I don't want to be hateful, but like, I'm a woman. How can I be misogynistic to you? You're a man. Like that's.
But you were identifying as a man at the time, right?
Yeah, and that math started to really bother me. Like,
Is that when things started to kind of unravel for you?
there's part of it. The phalloplasty is what unraveled it for me.
You
Canceling
want
that.
to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was planning on having phalloplasty, which is bottom surgery for FTMs. It's a 4-phase surgery that's without complications to create a fake phallus. So you can pee standing up and you get an erectile device. Essentially, that's what a phalloplasty is. It's 4 phases, and I was scheduled for phase 1 on January 7th of 2025. So I went that fall to my appointment with the OBGYN who does the vaginectomy. Now, a vaginectomy is where you rip the vagina out and close it up. When she explained this procedure to me, and this is September of 24, I started freaking out.
Yeah, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a vaginect. I just assumed it was put on, and that,
No, they
like,
take your
that
vagina
was
out
something I thought you could kind of undo. But you're saying that they remove the vagina, and
and sew it up. That's it.
so you can't go back from that. Is that correct?
Now you can opt to not have the vaginectomy. But what that does is then you can't do the urethral lengthening or anything. Like all it would just be cosmetic phallus. So I'm just using their terms just to be
No,
clear.
that's,
Yeah.
and I'm curious, what is the success rate, or the, like, of the surgeries that they do? And I'm sure they're not doing that many of them. Let's be
You know,
realistic, right?
I don't have a success rate, but I can tell you that the complication rate, which I don't have an exact number for, they made us watch like an hour-long complication rate video before we even did a consult.
That's good.
U of M, it was U of M in Michigan. I thought that was good because it probably weeded out some people.
Yeah, I mean, I think the honesty is the part that, always bothered me, is like it was all rainbows and sunshine. And it's like, no, there are complications. People need to be
Yeah.
aware of those.
I think it could have been more heavy on the complications because once I started researching it myself, I was like, oh wow. And then I joined a bunch of like, groups on Facebook for bottom surgery. I wanted to get an idea from other trans guys. And I started hearing about like necrotic tissue and fistulas and crazy stuff. But anyway, I started thinking about what a vaginectomy actually is, and it started to freak me the hell out. That honestly is the catalyst of everything.
But you had top surgery, correct?
I did, and by the time I had top surgery, I'd already had 12 abdominal surgeries. I kind of was like it didn't register. That didn't register to me. Of course, now I'm mad about it, but
Are you? So you regret having it?
yeah, I do. But I'm not going to get breast reconstruction, and a lot of people ask me about that. Why? Why not? I'm going to be 44 next month. I had them until 2023. I've lived my life. I can see why a young woman that detransitioned would want that. But for me, I'm never going to be able to recreate what I had naturally. So I'm not going to. I don't want any more unnecessary surgery. I've had surgery so many times.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece is the unnecessary surgery. Is, surgery is really a complicated, it's the anesthesia, right? That
Yeah.
is the difficult part. And, you never want to have surgery if it's unnecessary. Not so I'm interested. I'm fascinated by the whole thing. But so the top surgery is maybe regrettable, but it's not. It's something that you can live with. And
Yeah, I'm just trying to live with it and accept that for what it is. I'll tell you what happened is that it got moved up 6 months, and I didn't have
top
much time to
surgery.
think. Yes.
Okay.
I think had I had that extra 6 months, I may have reconsidered it. Uh, they gave me 5 days
Yeah.
before the surgery date, so I was in the mode of, oh wait, now I need to fix my work schedule and do like I wasn't thinking. They were just like, here's the date. We're moving you up. Rest is
Did,
history.
when you so with the bottom surgery, you it was a process, right? That
So, oh
um,
yeah, you also have to do hair removal on your arm. So my
oh,
arm, I had to do months of electrolysis and laser because they do a skin graft from your arm to create this thing, this flesh tube, if you will. Um, so you have to remove all the hair off that area. It takes 18 months. I did about 6 months of it. Luckily, my hair grew back. So,
because you didn't do 18 months worth.
but I hear that even then it can still grow back.
I was wondering about that. It's like,
It's
if
not
it,
a guarantee.
yeah, wow. But
Because
so,
they do that because they take your urethra and they lengthen it and they can't have any hair in that canal. I mean, it's very grotesque. I want to make anyone listening that I'm talking about this, and I do think it's barbaric. Now, because I know the ins and outs, right? And I've seen it. I've seen lots of photographs. It's bottom surgery for F to M's isn't as advanced as it is for the men. Vaginoplasty is way more advanced.
what's the recovery like?
For phalloplasty, very rough. I mean, it would have been a few months at least not working. Um, I've heard it's one of the most grueling recoveries of all of the trans surgeries
Because you
because
say it's four parts. So so you've just recovered from one part of it before the next part
then
starts,
they wait about 6 to 12 months for the next phase. So you can tell that takes years on top of
right?
it.
Wow.
Now, when my surgery date was coming up, I realized that what they were going to do is do the vaginectomy, wait 6 months, and then create a phallus.
Oh,
That pissed me off.
so what do you have, a colostomy bag, or how does that
No,
work?
apparently I would just be a eunuch. Like, okay, so I would have no
No, but
vagina.
how would you urinate?
That
And
I still don't have the answer that I was wondering.
interesting.
I think, well, I think they have to do something there. Um,
Obviously, they
I
have to
did.
do
I
something.
think I just started freaking out so badly. I didn't. I just was like, "You're gonna do what?" Now, had they combined the surgery like everyone else does, because it's more normal to have the vaginectomy with the phalloplasty than it is to
Oh,
do it
okay.
separately. I don't think I would have had the freak out. So it kind of was like a godsend almost.
Hmm. Do they? How long have they been doing phalloplasties?
I've heard early ones, crude ones in the 20s and 30s, but I think the ones they do now, it can't be that long, maybe some decades.
Okay. So is there any data on aging for people who've had the surgeries? Like what happens when they're in their senior years?
No, I have not seen any data on that. There should be some follow up because, um, you know, you're messing with genitals. There should be some studying.
Well, it's the hormones and the genitals. I would think that
Yeah,
there's, and we've got such an issue with dementia in our senior population with Alzheimer's and then there's Parkinson's and
and young Alzheimer's too. Yeah,
what's that?
and like younger, it's getting younger people with Alzheimer's too.
Oh, really? Is that happening
Like
more?
like 70s, 60s. My mom works in a with dementia patients. It's rough. She's telling me like they're 60-year-olds are in there with dementia.
Wow, that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just as I'm older and I'm seeing what's coming, um, or what's possibly coming, and I can't imagine complicating it more by trying to alter my body in ways that would be challenging to manage as I get older, you know?
Very challenging. The thing about trans, this is like a chasing the dragon. What's the next surgery? What's the next hormone dose? What's this? What's that? Like, where does it end? Are you happy when you're completed with the phalloplasty? Well, no. I don't think that would have made me happy. In fact, I'm very glad. I will tell you, nobody was in favor of that in my family.
And I can understand why, again, just from the standpoint of it's an unnecessary surgery, Now, I can't imagine, having a surgery is never going to make you happy, right?
No.
I mean, unless it's removing a tumor or something like that, that's taking something that's making you sick out. But generally speaking, and I guess there's that mental, like, there will be some trans men who say, having breasts was very mentally distressing to me. And I can't speak to that because I haven't ever experienced that. Obviously you have. But did it make you happy ultimately that you did remove them? You know what I mean?
At first.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
At
did
first.
it,
But that wore off. Like, at first it was like, well, in my specific case, I'll say this: I'm allowed to because I don't have them anymore. I had a really nice rack. I was very busty. Okay, they ran my life. They led me around. That kind of thing, right? Like that's what everyone looked at when they talked to me, and then they would grow up. Now I dealt with lots of creepy men in my life because of that. It did a bartending. I mean, I want to write a book about just boobs running my life. They did. I think I had a lot of trauma around them being sexualized so much because they were very sexualized. Where I think a lot of these other people feel more like I want a flat chest, you know. Um, so like this is me analyzing things later, looking back and saying, well, why would I do that at the age? You know, because and I did. At first, yeah, I was happy about it because I was like, oh, this is a step to becoming who I am, right? Like, my shirts fit better. Now I don't have I used to have that, problem where the button would be very stressed out here. Not, stuff like that. And then that wore off.
okay. And we're running low on time,
Okay.
so I'm going to ask you one more question, but I want to invite you back because this discussion has prompted a million other questions
Great.
that I'd love to ask you that are not necessarily trans related. And again, I'm trying to get away from that, like we were talking before. It's like that's not who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we are humans and we are multifaceted and complicated and simple and all of these things, but I don't think you can pigeonhole one person just based on okay, I do it with the hair, right? I'm a redhead. But and I probably fit all those all those stereotypes. But that's not, there's more to me than that. And I assume that there is a lot more to you than that. But you've opened up some things that I'd love to explore with you just
Yeah,
conversation.
I would love to come back anytime. I'm a pretty, let me tell you, I'm a pretty open book. Like I said, I've been writing on social media for 25 years. I want to tell my story. I ultimately want to write a book. So like,
Well,
I
I
do,
have
you
been
know,
trying to convince you to write your book
you have,
for a while now,
you have.
and I
I did take
will.
a couple of your tips too, just to let you know.
Good. And I am, my DMs are open if you have any questions on any of that, because and I do like you're a product of the disco ball. I think that would be a fantastic title.
Because that's how I
Love.
came into being. It's true.
I think that's great.
Disco.
All right, so this is the last one. If you could give your younger self pre everything one piece of lighthearted advice, what would it be? And
Go
what song would
travel.
you be listening to?
What?
And what song would you be listening to when you gave this?
I would tell myself, please don't work every second and go travel and have a good time and enjoy yourself. Just enjoy. You're going to be young once. That's what I would tell myself. And I'd be rocking out to some Madonna. Probably at that time, maybe some Into the Groove or something fun, like 80s
I
Madonna.
love that period of Madonna.
You can't go wrong.
Oh, Borderline and all of that.
I love Madonna. I love, and but 80s Madonna is special.
You know, here's a funny story that has nothing to do with this, but about Madonna. My parents took me and a friend on a cruise back in mid 80s, probably 83 or something, back when cruises were, Love Boat and all that.
Yeah.
And it was a New Year's Eve cruise. So, and there was storming out. It was like the Poseidon Adventure. It was literally lifting both ways. And we were all dancing on the dance floor. And one of Madonna's song came on, and the guy I was dancing with was like, and I, in my absolute, and I'm cringing just thinking about this, said to him, nobody's going to know who Madonna is in 10 years. This was in mid 80s. And so here we are, 2026. We still know who Madonna is.
We sure do, don't we?
But the 80s were her best. She did some good stuff in the 90s too, I gotta say. I like that very introspective one of hers.
A Real Light.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good album.
Yeah, that's a great album. That's probably the last one I listened to. But I only listened
Confessions is one of her best in
What's that?
2005. Confessions on a Dance Floor from 2005 is
I
a
don't
good
think
album.
I'm familiar with that.
It's a good. It has Hung Up on it. It's like a good dance album, like house
I
dance.
will check that out because I loved her in the 80s, and she's on all of my playlists of, becoming empowered and, finding strength and all of that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
she's my go-to for that.
Yeah, and just pump you up kind of thing. So that's wow. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and hang on for a minute and we'll just chat on the other side of this, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.